Hello and welcome to the Coal Authority podcast. The Coal Authority exists to make a better future for people and the environment in mining areas. We carry out vital work to keep people, drinking water and the environment safe from the legacy impacts of our mining heritage. These podcasts are intended to offer some insight into the work that we do and why we do it, and we hope that you will find them interesting, and we would welcome any suggestions for content for future podcasts as these series grow. Without further ado, let's get into the next episode. Thank you. Hello everyone, welcome to the Coal Authority's first ever podcast, which will be one of many. We're here today to talk about Category 2 responder status, what that means for the organisation. I'm sat here with Julia Draycon, who's our Director of Community and Emergency Response, and also Jim Repp, our Head of Emergency Response. And they're going to tell us a little bit more about Category 2 responder status and why it's an important thing for the Coal Authority. So good afternoon, Julia, Jim, hope you're well.
Hello, thanks for having us.
Yeah, very well, thank you. Should we start out by saying a little bit more about what Category 2 status is and how it works? Jim, do you want to...
Yeah, absolutely. So the Civil Contingencies Act 2004, to give it its proper title, is the legislation covering civil protection in the United Kingdom. It's brought in following kind of a series of flooding, foot and mouth and fuel strikes in the early 2000s. And there's a number of elements of that legislation. One of them is the Category 1 and 2 organisations. So Category 1 organisations are your core responders, so your police, fire, ambulance, environment agency, NHS. And your Cat 2s are typically your supporting agencies, so not involved in every incident, but really pivotal in incidents relating to their field. So examples are Network Rail, utilities providers, Health and Safety Executive, and as of the 27th of Feb, the Coal Authority and the Met Office.
So Category 2 responder status, I'd say, formalises this incident response process, but it's not the case that Coal Authority has never responded to incidents on the coal field, which is obviously our estate to respond to. And working with partners has always been a part of that, but how does the Category 2 status formalise it, and what's kind of the benefit of being a Cat 2 responder?
Well, the way that the categorisation and the Civil Contingencies Act works practically on the ground is every police force area has a local resilience forum, and that's where those local responders meet. They discuss risks, they plan for emergencies, they practice for emergencies, they train and exercise together. And this categorisation means that we are recognised as a responder within that group, which will just open those doors for us, help us to work more closely with those local partners. And Jim has very much been doing that over the last year and 18 months in a really targeted way. Do you want to say a little bit more about that, Jim?
Yeah, so we've been going out and engaging with these local resilience forums and in Scotland the local resilience partnerships, and basically telling them who we are as the Coal Authority and what we do and how we can support them in kind of planning, responding and recovering from incidents. One of the key moments for me, I was chatting to a colleague from my fire and rescue service who'd recently responded to an incident with the Coal Authority had supported on. And the key thing for him is, 2 a.m. when he turned up at a scene, there had been some building instability issues. They had no idea what was going on underground. So as an organisation, we have a vast amount of knowledge and information that can help make decisions in that space, and we can support them in making decisions to protect communities and the environment on the ground. But at that time, because we weren't a Cat 2 and because we weren't working as closely as we are now and will be going forward, they didn't have access to that in a kind of a timely manner. And that was just a huge gap in his knowledge and potential cause for anxiety, because they didn't know what potential risks were, but we could really support and add value in that space.
And while approximately 25% of homes and businesses across the UK sit on former coalfield areas, incidents really are rare, which means that if people haven't come into contact with potential hazard or risk before, they won't necessarily know that we exist because they won't have had a need to be in contact with us. So one of the key focuses that we've got is about raising that awareness across that responder community, so that people know what to look for and what to do if they see signs of those sorts of hazards. And the other element that we're keen to do is engage across the residents and communities in those areas as well, just to raise awareness to people as to what to look out for. And so that should a rare event happen, that they know how to get hold of us, and they know that we are professional in what we do in response, that we've got loads of experience, we've got some really skilled and market-leading expert professionals that work within our organisation to be able to put right those situations when they do actually occur.
I think that's an interesting point. You mentioned 25% of properties in the UK being on the coalfield. Not a lot of people will know that. Again, not a lot of people really know about the coal because they've never had to. But in terms of people on the coalfield hearing this news for the first time, is that something that people should be worried about? That might make people feel that they're likely to be involved in an incident. I mean, how common are these incidents that we're talking about?
They're not common, first and foremost, and the mining infrastructure has been there for, in some cases, hundreds of years. But as a general rule across Great Britain, obviously awareness of mining is on the decline because of the decline in mining in Great Britain. So there isn't that knowledge of what's going on. For example, people may buy a house and not be aware that there is a kind of mining infrastructure nearby, simply because it's not active anymore and it just looks like a piece of land. So, but there is no increased risk, or there's no change in that space, which is why we're doing this. We're doing this to kind of be more effective in our response and working with partners.
Yeah, we want people to be able to recognise potential risks and hazards early. We want them to tell us about it so that we can send professional engineers out to have a look and to put right if it is an issue. And so we've got loads of experience with that. We cover all of the coalfield areas, and we've got a dedicated call-out team that helps us to be able to support and respond to those emergencies 24/7, 365.
And that should be something that reassures people, shouldn't it? I suppose if you're living on the coalfield, it's reassuring to know that the Coal Authority and other agencies are aware of the estate that the people are living on. We're aware of the mine entries. There's thousands of mine entries monitored every year. All of this work that we do that supports the Category 2 responder status. But like you said, we've been doing it for 30 years nearly now. So this formalisation, whilst a great thing, it doesn't really change business as usual as we see it. Is that fair?
Absolutely, and there's a big movement in resilience at the moment to be kind of more proactive. Prevention is better than cure, and obviously is better for public safety. And if there is any doubt at all, or if there is a mining hazard, certainly would encourage kind of colleagues, both internal and external, members of the public, to call the hazard line, 0800 288 4242, and we will investigate with partners.
Yeah, and we'll share that number on the content for this podcast when we put it out on social media. Like I say, it's a useful number to have. Obviously, it won't replace 999, and we accept that, but it's useful if that starts to become something that people are aware of, certainly in certain areas of the country. So, Jamie, you touched on the work that's been done to get us here, but what does Category 2 responder status mean in terms of the future? Do we have to maintain certain standards, or how do we develop this to ensure we don't lose the status, if that's even an option?
Yeah, good point. And obviously we're doing a lot of work in that space. But as of the 27th of Feb, there is no big change in the way we work operationally. We have been, since our inception, that 24/7 response organisation. This is just formalising it. So we're working internally, really building depth to our response, continually training colleagues and exercising them to make sure they are match fit should we need to respond to a live incident, but also working with external partners across the three nations, doing kind of exercises and taking that very much risk-based approach and putting together really realistic and challenging exercises.
I think just building on that, you can't replace the opportunity to train and exercise with people. Those relationships that we are now more easily able to build across those local partners really do stand you in good stead when the phone goes at 3 o'clock on a Sunday morning and something is actually live happening. You know, the fact that you know them, you understand the context that they're working in, they understand what your capabilities are. We're not having to prove anything to either party at that point is absolutely where we want to be. You know, that commonality of understanding and that breadth of knowledge that we can bring.
No, I think that's been a really interesting initial introduction to what Category 2 response status is. Hope people have found that, you know, informative. And there's a lot of information on gov.uk about Category 2 response status as well, if people are interested in finding out more. And I think it's something that we can expand on and develop here as we get into these podcasts. We can talk about some of the training exercises that are involved in that multi-agency field, you know, working with the police, fire and ambulance service, you know, and others, and being more visible. So if people are seeing us on the news or, you know, just out in communities, they'll hopefully start to realise what that's all about. But I think for now that's been really useful. Thank you for your time. Have you any closing comments?
I think for me it would just be to thank colleagues from across the Coal Authority, because it's certainly been an effort from organisational wide to achieve this, and also that it's the end of the beginning and lots of exciting stuff to come.
Well, thank you both for your time. Like I say, we hope that people have found that interesting. And tune in next time.
So we hope you found that podcast interesting and insightful. As we're sharing it on our social media channels, if you have any questions or further comments or any suggestions for future podcasts, we'd be really pleased to hear from you. So don't be afraid to get in touch. And we look forward to spending some time with you next time. Thank you. Hello and welcome to the Coal Authority podcast.